Precious Life is proud to spotlight Barrett Bookstore, the oldest and largest independent bookstore in Fairfield County, Connecticut. Woman-founded in 1939 and woman-owned today, Barrett Booksellers develop relationships with authors, hosting many events like our yearly Ladies of Summer panel, partnerships with local schools and libraries, and friendships with our loyal patrons. Visit Barrett in Darien, Connecticut, or at barrettbookstore.com. And we're proud to showcase Newtonville Books, an independent bookstore located at 10 Langley Rd in Newton, Massachusetts, in the old stone building at the north corner of the Triangle parking lot. Come for the books, stay for the books, and learn more and shop online at newtonvillebooks.com. Maybe you had one too, a film crush. Maybe Clark Gable fascinated you back when Gone with the Wind was a 2-day special television event, complete with commercials that you watched with your mom and cousin well past your bedtime. Or maybe when you were older, it was River Phoenix in Stand By Me, or one of the Coreys in The Lost Boys, the film you stayed up way too late watching one summer, and it gave you nightmares for months about vampires lurking in the closet. Or what about the other stars, like any Gen X girl? I went through my Molly Ringwald phase, though I vibed most with Ione Skye from Say Anything. But all of these were child's play when it came to my love affair with Katharine Hepburn. I spent one adolescent summer working my way through old movies from the public library. I took a Roman holiday with Audrey Hepburn, no relation, and I chuckled along with the Tin Man, especially when our neighbors named their small gray terrier Asta. But it was Katharine Hepburn I wanted to be. There she was in Woman of the Year, winning accolades and making the boys jealous. And look at her in Adam's Rib, arguing about gender equality, back before I even understood how much the worlds of business and politics were so utterly stacked against me. It wasn't like she was the sexiest starlet. Lauren Bacall was more sultry, and Ingrid Bergman made men lose their minds wanting to hold and protect her. And it wasn't like she made things easy. She wasn't as likable as Meg Ryan or as in need of a fairy tale ending as Julia Roberts. But she was riveting. So smart, too. Katharine Hepburn made me feel like it was okay to be a smart girl, and not everyone in the world would find that annoying. She was a feminist before I ever understood what that word meant, and to this day, Desk Set, along with Die Hard, of course, is one of my favorite Christmas movies. And if you ever want to see what true love looks like on the big screen, watch any movie where Spencer Tracy looks at Katharine Hepburn. That's the kind of utter devotion I learned to wait for. So, of course, when I heard about a brand new novel about the life of Katharine Hepburn, I bought it immediately, and I had to meet the kindred spirit who had the chops to write it. Priya Parmar is also the author of the novel Vanessa and Her Sister, a New York Times notable book, as well as co-author of the musical Sylvia, which was nominated for the Olivier Award for Best Original Musical. Her latest novel, The Original, is out now. Priya believes in rescuing animals, veganism, protecting the ocean, and telling stories. She splits her time between Hawaii and Connecticut with her family and 4 rescue dogs. Priya Parmar, welcome to Wild Precious Life.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I am delighted you're here because my boyfriend and I broke up in high school in part because he was not as obsessed with the 1949 black and white classic Adam's Rib as I was. And I knew there was no future there. That if he didn't see the mastery in that Katharine Hepburn movie, this was not the man for me. Katharine Hepburn was the first feminist I think I ever loved, even maybe before I knew what a feminist was. I saw her the picture of her like wearing pants when all the other girls were wearing skirts. I was like, oh,
Yes.
I like this one, and I don't care if it was the Philadelphia Story or Holiday or on Golden Pond. Like I had a lifetime long love of this woman even before I was like 22. So when I found out that she'd written this book, the original, a novel about Katharine Hepburn coming to Hollywood, I'm like, must meet Priya Parmar, must read book. So I am just delighted you're here.
Oh, thank you so much. That is completely legitimate grounds for a breakup. That is totally understandable. I yeah. Somebody
Yeah.
who doesn't understand the genius of that movie, no future.
No, a thousand
Nothing.
percent no. I get that I was a little bit of an old soul as a 17-year-old. I get that not everyone was getting black and white movies from the library at that time, and that he was just there for a makeout sesh. But I had priorities, and I stuck to them. So those were some of the reasons I loved Katharine Hepburn. But what initially drew you to her?
I'd always watched old movies. I'd always loved old movies. I was the kid who waited all year for Little Women to come on. Little Women would, it would come on once a year. And I remember my mom having to call another mom and lie and say I was sick and couldn't go to the birthday party because we found out that Little Women was going to be on the same day as Annalisa's birthday party. And I was like, Annalisa, I can't, I have the flu all of a sudden. I can't go to your birthday party because I need to see Little Women. So I loved them all my life. And then as I got older, I just, once I realized sort of more what was behind them and what was in them and how unbelievably bold and progressive these women were, I just love them even more. So, and Katharine Hepburn, it came about because I was watching Philadelphia Story with my mom, and she said out of nowhere, this was her comeback movie. And I was like, come back from what? Because I had no idea there was ever anything to come back from. As far as I was concerned, she'd always, she'd never made a misstep. She'd always been just so unbelievably competent and so incredibly in control of her life and her career and her image and her, iconography, everything. And I started Googling, and I did that thing where you start Googling and Googling, and then you start ordering books, and then you order like 30 books, and then you're like, I'm not really doing this. I'm not really going to write about her. I'm just really interested in her. And I've just, and then finally, like 6 months later, you're like, okay, I'm totally obsessed and I'm clearly writing about her. This is happening. and and there it is, and you find yourself writing about someone you totally are madly in love with, which is the stakes feel really high when you're doing that.
How did you find her voice? I was thinking about, again, I have this lifelong obsession with Katharine Hepburn, but I don't think I ever would have deigned or dared, or I don't think I would have had the chops. How did you find her voice, especially when so much of what we see of Katharine Hepburn, as you point out, is orchestrated and prepared ahead of time? And this is the way I like to sit. This is my carriage. How did you find her beneath all of that?
Well, there's two things. There's the voice of the novel, and then there's her actual voice, which this was the first time I was writing a character where we knew what she sounded like. And that was incredibly daunting. But the way I do it is I just do insane amounts of research, just crazy amounts of research. The part of the process that I really love, and it's also where I hang out and hide when I don't know how the novel's going to go yet. So it's kind of, it's a double-edged sword in a little bit of ways, but it it was something that was researching and researching and researching and thinking, okay, well, the character will show up. And the character, hadn't shown up in a way where I could hear them talking in my head. And I was like, okay, I just have to start and see what happens. And the first lines of the novel are the first lines that I wrote. And that
That
never
never happens. That never
never
happens.
happens. I always do like these, chapters that I know I'm going to cut later as a kind of on-ramp into the book. But the first lines of the book were the first lines that I wrote. And I was like, okay, this is a surprise. I wasn't expecting any of this. And then she started talking in my head. So I was so relieved. I was like, I can't have done that much research to not have her like come to the party. And my editor gets really nervous when I say things like this, but I actually don't know how it works. You do all the research and then somebody starts chattering in your brain and you write it down and take notes. It's a weird process that I don't fully understand, which makes people around me nervous,
Sure.
you
It's
know.
almost like being a medium or a conduit. There's the 80s or 90s movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze and Whoopi
Yes,
Goldberg, and she doesn't understand how she
yes,
can tune in because at first she's faking it. And I think as writers, at first we're faking it. We are just typing letters and we are just like, I am writing novel, and you don't hear anything. But
yes,
once you find that character's voice and it's in your head, you can't actually. For me, it's almost like I need a commute away
yeah,
from the page. I'm in my office here at home, and the kids would be over there, but I need to just like walk to get from where I am with the voice in my head, and then because I'm in it, and it's
yes,
almost like channeling a spirit.
yes. Yes. And when you say things like that to your editor, they get a
No,
little bit like, no, 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 we need you to know the exact address of the voice so that you can find it if it stops talking. Like you
mm-hmm.
can't just, you know, that
Yeah,
makes them a little nervous. But yeah, so that's exactly how I am. I don't know completely where it comes from. You do all of the research and you get steeped in it, and then you just have to hope it's going to work. And
yeah.
you know, and I need to knock on some wood, but like yeah, it's a process I don't completely understand. So
Well, I'm sure people ask you this all the time, but then why a novel? Why not do all the research and write the definitive, authorized or unauthorized biography of the Katharine Hepburn? Why do you do all that research and then write fiction?
my background was in academics, and so my PhD had 17,000 footnotes. That is not a euphemism. It was horrific, and it was no fun. And then I started writing fiction and I was like, "Oh my God, it's fun over here." It's like it's a really good time. It's wonderful. It's not that you don't have the responsibility to get it right, because I do feel a huge responsibility to get it right. It's that you're telling a story, but you're not telling the whole history. It's sort of like you're going to the buffet and then you're putting together a wonderful meal. You're not going to the buffet and then taking it all back home. I love that space between history and story. It's a really, really fun space. And the imagination part is just, it's the best fun. And it when it works, it just feels like, flying.
Can
So
you, for people who haven't read the book, can you give an example of a leap that you had to make? So, for instance, I could go to Wikipedia right now and I could find out what year Katharine Hepburn started filming Holiday with Cary Grant. I could look this up, but I probably don't find the lighting, like if it was a green lit room or so. Like what's an example of a jump you had to make where you couldn't research your way in and you just had to trust that the story was close enough?
well, I mean, I feel like that happens in all of the private moments. We know she did this and this and this on this day. We know she arrived in Hollywood on this day, and she was wearing this, and she looked like this, and this is the photo of her getting off the train. But we don't know how she was feeling. We don't know all of that emotional sediment underneath. So for me, the fact is sort of like this topographical crust, and then underneath are the moral, the emotional decisions, the moral decisions, the all of those layers that hold up that crust, that are the reasons why she made those decisions, that are the why of everything. And that's where all of the imagination comes. So it happened in every moment, in every bit of dialogue, because we don't know. Some people reported sort of snatches of dialogue here and there. So, we know rumor has it she said this line or that line to someone. But then the rest of the conversation is a blank. So it's all filling in and figuring out and creating a character that has enough emotional, moral, heft to have made these decisions. So it's a really fun process.
Yeah. And I can see why it would help to have written 17,000 footnotes before this so that you're not daunted by the research, or that when you are daunted by the research, you can be like, it's just part of it. You just read. I guess the inverse of my question is also then, was there supposition, or were there overheard bits of conversation or rumors that you decided not to use because they didn't feel right to the story?
Yeah. I mean, there's so much that you research and you want to use, and then it'll weigh the story down, or it'll pull it in a different direction, or we know somebody came in and said something in a conversation, but having that would have pulled the focus away from what was happening. So there's a lot of moments like that. There's an episode that happened where we know, when just before she became really, really famous, when it was sort of on the cards, and we knew it was on the cards, for her to become, she was going to be a star. She ran away and she went to Europe, and she got horribly seasick every single time she got on a boat. The joke she had with her husband is, we have to travel third class. Why throw up in first? Like, let's throw up in third. So this was not a pleasant trip, but she just fled the country, went to Europe, went to see an old family friend, stayed for 2 days. It's a 5-day boat trip. Came back, was with Ernest Hemingway on the boat back. We know she was hiding from the photographers, on the way there. And we know that she came out and was waving to all of the photographers on the way back. What happened? We don't know what happened. So that's something that I didn't end up using in the novel, because it would have, thrown it into it would have taken the trajectory in a whole other way. And you just want to so much because you spent all this time researching it and you're like, oh my God. So instead I used all of it and repurposed it in different ways, but I didn't use that actual bit of history. So yeah, it's hard when you do all that work to create, you know, the those set pieces in your head, and then you have to drop one of them. So
Oh, that when I read I think it was the acknowledgments or the afterward about Ernest Hemingway and Katharine Hepburn, and this would have, I'm forgetting which marriage, but it would have been Ernest and Pauline, maybe the second
yes,
Mrs. Hemingway coming back. So he's just dumped Hadley and
yes,
Bumpy in Paris, and is coming back with Pauline, who he'll then dump for Gellhorn, Martha Gellhorn. But
Martha
so like
Gellhorn.
the idea that Katharine Hepburn and her then husband, are
Yes,
on a boat with Ernest Hemingway and his mistress turned second Mrs. Hemingway soon,
yes.
or like you need to call Paula McLean's stat, and the two of you need to channel
I,
the voices of those and just write me that story because I'd never heard that before, and I was gobsmacked, and I'm desperate to get on that boat, and because imagine the conversation
what did he
between
say to
Katharine
her?
Hepburn and
No,
they're such strong personalities. Like, oh my gosh.
I know. And I
Bananas.
had I actually talked to Paula about it, and I was like, I need to put it in the thing, and she was just like, that's a lot of personality on that boat. Think really carefully about what you're doing.
Yeah. You could do
She's
an
like, that's the
entire
kind of
novel just there.
Yeah, she's like, that's the kind of
Mm.
thing that can really take it over if you're not really careful. And that was great advice because she was so right. Because I tried to make it work and tried to make it work, and then I realized I was like, it's not, it's not meant to be here. That's why.
Mm.
That's what's wrong. Which was really good advice. But things hitting the cutting room floor is hard when you've done so much research. And I keep things like draft after draft. And my editor is very, very wonderful and sweet and understanding for draft after draft. And then finally, I just get a big red circle around it and just the word no next to it. No. Like, not happening.
And every book has chaff. Every book has I was listening to a conversation with Amy Nizuka about her NEA Big Read, Bite by Bite, which
Yep.
is 40 stories. This is nonfiction, not fiction, but 40 stories about food that was important to her growing up, whether it's coconuts or mangoes or whatever she wanted to write about. And someone in the audience said, what was food number 41? What didn't make the cut?
Yes.
And her answer, she had an answer, which was chocolate, because she wrote it into a poem instead. But she actually told us about foods 41 through 200. That 40 essays made the book, but 200 were drafted.
Wow.
And the room went silent, and you could see the color drain from the faces of all the people who wanted to be writers, and someone stabbed at their chicken extra hard. And the idea of things not making it into the book, we all know that, right? I somewhere have a 22-page scavenger hunt of teenagers looking for the wrong edition of Huckleberry Finn. It makes no sense, but it was in a young adult novel. And when I was writing it, they were quippy and they were talking about racism and like important themes. And at some point I got to the end of it, and a beta reader friend was like, this scene feels kind of long. And I was like, no, it's not. And you get the feedback in the workshop, and you decide you're not going back to workshop, and you're not going to ever talk to them again. And they don't know what they're talking about, that the Huckleberry Finn scavenger hunt is elemental. And if they don't see that, and at some point you see it, and it gets dropped, and it joins the other 160 outtakes.
Yes.
And it's nice that you save it, that you have it. And some of it will find its way into another book, but much of it will not. And that's a lot of it is the story that you needed to tell yourself to get to the story that you told us.
That's exactly right. That's a great way to put it. The story you tell yourself to get to the story you tell us. That's a perfect way to put it. That's exactly what it is. It's something that was in there because it was a stepping stone you needed. It's not meant to be there. And then there's some stuff that you just really, really wanted I know. It's really hard. And it's also with there's historical detail that you want to put in there, but it can overwhelm a story. You know what I mean? Like having to understand how a film camera, a movie film camera worked in the 1930s to be able to write the scenes. I wanted a sketch with like labels and I was like, I have done a lot of work to understand how this works. And I want it in there. And you realize like, oh no, it's not actually for them. That was for me. That was for me to be able to write it. So
And that turns into a texture detail, like a canister being snapped shut. So as the reader, I get the canister snapping shut, and I don't get any of the best boys or galleys or lighting changes or resets, because all of that resetting took so long. But we get a hint of it. We get the texture of it. But you have to hold on to all those details that made it so that you could snap the canisters,
that
but
is so
the rest
crazy
doesn't find it in there.
that you picked that line because that's exactly where it lives. That is exactly where it lives. The fact that it boiled down to that, like I met with literally film historians to understand how it worked, and then it boiled down to that line, and they're so disappointed. They're like, all of that work, and I'm like, no, it helped me be able to write it. It helped me be able to set up the scene. It helped me understand how she needed to have a relationship with the camera. It helped, but you're right. It lives in exactly that line. The cameras, the canisters, the film canisters snapping shut. That's exactly
Well, and
what.
it also lives inside of Katharine Hepburn, the character, because one of the things I didn't understand, like you, I didn't know she had any comebacks. I just thought she's winning Academy Awards from the get-go, right out the gate. I just assumed that she was always the grande dame. And so she also lives inside of stories that don't get told. She also comes to this craft as a learner. She also doesn't know how the lighting and the shots work. So all of that, I think, also lives inside of Katharine Hepburn, who, despite the fact that she was an enthusiastic summer stock performer, has no idea how to
She's
act on film and isn't very good in the beginning.
No. She did her whole screen test with her back to the camera because she had only worked on the stage. So she didn't understand what it was to have a relationship with the camera. So she decided to just do it the way she was going to do it and did it with her back to the camera, which made David Selznick crazy. He was like, what are we do? What are we buying here? What is this? This person doesn't know. But George Cukor saw something that he wanted. And she learned how to do it, but there was a very difficult period where she did not know how to do it.
And I'm fascinated by the idea of her jaunty angularity. What I know about this person, right? Her sometimes masculine energy, her voice that's not she's not a bombshell. She's not a sex kitten. They try to make her an ingenue. All of these templates that they have for what a woman on the silver screen is supposed to be, she doesn't fit any of them. And that's why some people hate her. And that's why most of us can't take our eyes off of her. That even Selznick, right? David Selznick, who did not like her, did not think she was worth the $1,400 a week or whatever price she commanded.
Yes.
Brazen of her to ask that for herself. I was so proud of her. But even he had to admit that there was something about her on the camera that you couldn't look away from.
Yes. She arrived in Hollywood. She did everything differently. She was not an ingenue in the way that the other ones were, in the way that I mean, first of all, this was the Great Depression. This is 1932. And she's like, you know what I'm going to ask for? I'm going to ask for the moon and a pony and, everything else. She's 1,500 a week to start with. Untested, untried, never done anything on film. Fired from most of her jobs in New York. She'd been fired from show after show after show after show. And then she had a hit called The Warrior's Husband. But she arrived in Hollywood. Thank God she'd signed the contracts and everything else before she got there, because otherwise I think it would have gone very badly. She'd had a metal filing. She came on the train and she'd gone out onto the viewing platform. A metal filing had gone up into her eye. Her eye was like bright red. She washed her face at this point with rubbing alcohol. So it's like shiny and tight and bright red. And her eye is like weeping. And she's wearing clothes that would be avant-garde in the fall in New York. And she's wearing them in summer in California. And she's like, I'm here to be in your next film, and I'm charging more than anyone else ever. And, they were horrified on every level. And she won them all over. It's fantastic. And it's such a good lesson in, really asking for what you're worth. Like, she really was so out in front on that in a way that I think is just important to remember now, always. It's brilliant.
Yeah, she knew her worth even when she maybe wasn't worth it yet.
Yes.
She
knew her
knew
future
what
worth.
she could command. Yeah. And she wasn't without her missteps too, because she gets she's the darling. They put her in the movies. They see something in her, but then Katharine Hepburn chooses scripts that there's that one. It's Sylvia. I have to look this one up. Sylvia Scarlett was not in my home library in Medina, Ohio 44256. We didn't have that one because I went and I got every video that I could play, and that one went there. And so I have to go find this 1935 film where Katharine Hepburn paired with Cary Grant, and she brings she's cross-dressing, right? She's dressing as a boy in 1935. Men had been dressing as girls since the 1500s, but for some reason in the States during that time, we will not have it. What was going on aside from the Depression that we also decided that women couldn't dress as men? Tell us about that.
First we had, huge economic hardship, going on, like enormous economic hardship going on. And then we had so the I didn't know about it. I had to go and learn everything about the Hays Code, the what it was pre-Code Hollywood, post-Code Hollywood. I didn't know that in the early 1930s in Hollywood there was this ecosystem of studios, stars, the media, and they were all in on the secret. Everyone was in on it. And Hollywood was this brilliantly progressive place. It was not uncommon for someone to have, an open marriage and a girlfriend and a boyfriend and that was all completely, acceptable as long as it stayed inside this sort of closed circuit ecosystem. Um, as the 1930s went on, that ecosystem got leaky and the rest of the country started hearing little bits about what was going on and was not into it. This was not a hugely progressive time in the United States. Homosexuality was not okay. It was not socially okay. It was not legally okay. It was not, it was just difficult across the board. And Hollywood was not living by those rules at all. So the Hays Code came in and imposed this kind of this basically this outside strictures and outside rating system and outside set of criteria, and films began to get shut down and not get through and not get past, and these wonderfully progressive scripts from the early 1930s weren't making it through. And that's when you get more into the era of, when couples would sleep in single beds, like two sets of, that's where you were headed. And here's Katharine Hepburn making a film like Sylvia Scarlett, and she'd just come off a huge hit. And so they were like, okay, you can do what you want. You can pick what you want. And she's like, I want this. And it was such a bomb. Oh my God. It really, nearly took her down. And I'm not going to give it away, but she made a series of brilliant, brilliant, brilliant choices.
I
So
appreciate that you tell her story against the backdrop of Cary Grant's story as well. I won't give things away, but they have experiences of childhood trauma that do, I think, in both cases, make them long for the screen, make them long for Hollywood, make them long for those things, and which find them in relationships that are or would not have been part of the decorum that
yes,
Hollywood is asking for. So I appreciate that you put both of them in there because first off, they're in movie after movie, and second, Cary Grant is not crucified when Sylvia Scarlett bombs. In
yeah,
fact, he continues to make lots of money. He is not crucified when he's in a domestic household spread with his then gentleman friend and or lover, depending
of
on how
course.
history sees it, right? That he does all the same things that Katharine Hepburn does and is not punished for them the way she is. The gender differences about what we will allow from a man and we forbid from a woman. And what does it take in Katharine Hepburn's case? Again, won't spoil it, but in some parts it takes a friendship with aviator Howard Hughes, right? That in fact it takes another man for her to be seen as having worth again. I found that comparison fascinating, and I didn't know much of any of those stories.
I didn't either. And I mean, both of them came from childhoods that I did not know anything about. They both came from such trauma, and not just childhoods, young adulthood, just unbelievable traumatic circumstances. And really surprising lives, just not what you would expect. And they both carved out these lives that were beyond the sort of social acceptability kind of sphere. And he didn't get ripped apart for Sylvia Scarlett. He did offer to do the next film for free because he was so upset about it. Um, but he also wasn't cross-dressing on film. He can get away with so much more. Men could get away with so much more. And he was, openly living with Randolph Scott. Admittedly, he was getting married to a series of other people, but he was living with Randolph Scott. And at the end of his life, Cary Grant, when asked about the relationship with Randolph Scott, he said in one of the most poignant kind of quotes from him ever, he said, "Have you ever heard of gravity collapse?" And the person said no, and he said, "Some call it love at first sight." That's how he characterized his relationship with Randolph Scott. This person that he clearly adored. And this series of domestic photos of them is astonishing. They're baking and doing dishes and just they're astonishing photos. And he did not get into the same kind of trouble. They were instead women were supposed to look at those and say, "Oh, he needs a woman to come and take care of him." That's what the studio was thinking that those films would what those photos would provoke. But we read them totally differently. But he was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful friend to her, and he was such a great character to write. Oh my God. He was so much fun to write. And I had no idea he was going to take up so much real estate in the book. But then I realized he was a brilliant counterpoint to her because he was living with many of the same choices in front of him, and he was being treated differently than she was.
Absolutely. His price that he commands goes up and hers goes down. They continue to offer him juicy rolls and they offer her woman with chickens. They don't offer her anything.
They offer her nothing.
And I didn't know about Laura. I knew about the existence of potentially a Laura, and Laura's early in the book, so I think we can talk about Laura without giving too much away. That Katharine Hepburn on that train that you described, when she does get the metal shaving in her eye, she's not traveling alone. She's
No.
not traveling with a husband because we can't have our ingenues be married. But she's traveling with a female companion, which was okay at first because, oh yeah, we wouldn't just put you on a train if you've come from good people out east. Of course, we'd have you have a companion with you. But as time goes on, talk around the studio from David Selznick and others is we can't have there be a Laura. And so I think my
Yes.
question for you is when you talk about getting it right, when you talk about wanting to get it right, how scary was it to write Laura when there are descendants and family members presumably still living who might be knocking at your door and saying, "But Priya, it didn't go down like that and we didn't say it." Like, so how did you write Laura?
It's really tricky when you are writing something and there's, the family is there, and I totally understand, and I tried very, very hard to get it right. And I looked at all of it, and from people I interviewed and all the information that I could find, this was the most plausible sort of scenario, was that she was not just a friend. And so that's what I wrote. But at the end, it's a novel. It's a story. I also felt like there was such profound emotion between them and such serious, intense love between them. And you look at their relationship beyond the scope of the book and how she came back into her life again and again and again. And it seemed to go beyond friendship. So that was my big big thing, is that it just seemed to go beyond friendship. And it also seemed like, yes, people have denied it, but there are also people who have said it's happened. So it's kind of, there are biographers who said it happened. There are people who were there who said it happened. So there's enough on both sides. I wasn't pulling things. There's nothing I just pulled out of thin air. I had historical grounds for everything I wrote.
So Katharine Hepburn was indeed considered, not considered, but around to have been considered, if they would have considered her for the part of Scarlett in Gone with the Wind, and was famously
Yes.
she wanted to play, I mean, that to me, that she wanted to play Scarlett in Gone with the Wind tells me everything about the how desperate she was to, that's not a part for her, but how desperate she was to still be relevant.
I know. And but if you think about, I mean, nobody knew that Vivian Leigh existed. Nobody, she had no presence in the, but now we can't imagine anyone but Vivian Leigh. But like at that time, she wanted it really badly. And it was really awkward because Irene Selznick was one of her dearest friends. And, they knew who they'd cast. They knew, and you can read David Selznick's memos about this.
That's right. All those memos
All
that
the
guy.
memos, they're all, we have them. We have them all,
Oh,
and
that's
they're
helpful.
amazing. He was an excellent writer. They're astonishing to read. And he knew it wasn't her. He knew it wasn't. It couldn't be her. And she couldn't carry a film at that point in his mind that was going to cost that much, and she was the wrong temperament, wrong whatever he was looking for Scarlett O'Hara. And we can see it that she wouldn't be Scarlett O'Hara. She had to go and be Tracy Lord in Philadelphia Story, but we didn't, she didn't know that yet.
I'm not going to give away the background of Philadelphia Story because I do
No,
think
no.
that's an important. We're not going to talk about that, but I do think it's important for the people who've watched Philadelphia Story that if you're an old movie buff, you've seen Jimmy Stewart and Cary Grant, and you've seen Katharine Hepburn in this. It's been on TV, it's been on Turner Classic Movies when you've seen this. But if you'd all care about old films, you've got to read the original here by Priya Parmar because the background to that story is so worth knowing. I'm grateful for that. But I do have one bone to pick, and my bone to pick is why wasn't your book longer? Why did it end so quickly? Because my boy Spencer Tracy, he doesn't come into Katharine Hepburn's life until later in the story. Like, so she's working with Cary Grant in the 1930s, and Spencer Tracy comes a little bit later in the story. So why was your book so short? And is there going to be a sequel? And when can I get it?
It's weird. I'm somebody who doesn't outline. I don't ever know when it's supposed to end. So when I was first learning to drive, decided I was going to learn stick. I don't remember why. I think someone said you can't possibly learn stick, and I was like, I can do it. Here I go. I'm going to learn stick. Stalled on the highway, never learned stick again. But I remember the driving instructor was like, "You'll feel when the gear needs to change. You'll feel it. You'll feel it." I didn't. I didn't feel it at all. But with books, I can feel when the gear needs to change. I can feel when it is ending and it's like, oh, it's the end of this story. And I didn't know that. It's happened with all three of my books. I didn't know it until I got to like literally, I would stay up all night and I'm like, oh my God, it's here. This is it. This is the end of the book. The plane is landing. This is time, this is it. And so it's happened that way all three times where I suddenly realized that this is the end. So I wasn't sure that Spencer Tracy wasn't going to be, I didn't know that that's how it was going to be. But she has another really great big love in there that I also really didn't want to undermine. And and even at the end of her life, she talked about what a great love he was. So he was a pretty spectacular love. So it's one of those things where I didn't have complete control over it. It sort of decides when it needs to end. And I didn't want to trade in the love that I'd built.
No, that's completely fair. That was completely fair. I also thought about the fact that Katharine Hepburn was such a private person, right? She gave almost no television interviews that I know of. That you described was it the Dick Cavett show? Where she went in just to think about maybe if she was going to talk to him, and they secretly recorded it. And that I'm going to go look up those 4 minutes. The idea that she was captured,
Yes.
but she's very private about all of these relationships, and I kind of settled on, because in her case Spencer Tracy is the one that she's with him until he dies.
Yeah.
That it was kind of an homage to her privateness, that for both public reasons he was married, and also private reasons that they were kin, and also the she that she was, the her that she was with Spencer, is a little bit different than the
Yes.
her that we get. So I can see the mismatch even with the woman that we see making these movies and the woman we see later with him. So it made the gear shift. It seemed right to me, even though I
Oh,
wanted to go into sixth and seventh and eighth and ninth and tenth gears. I understood that we were closing, and it made sense.
if you ever see the end of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner,
I have
where
to go back and rewatch it because I've
oh
seen
my
that movie,
God,
but not so those he's saying that to her.
he's saying that to her. So with Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, he knew he was dying. He hoped he would survive the filming. He lasted, he lived 3 weeks after the end of the film. And the last speech of the film, he's speaking to her. And I can almost not talk about it without crying, but the look on his face and the look on her face as she's listening, I don't feel like you can write that because that there it is. It exists. Like we can see it. It's some of the most astonishing moments on film ever. And that's the love. So I was like that's for them. I don't want to touch that.
Oh, that's beautiful. I heard Colm Tobin, the author of Brooklyn and Long Island and other things, talk a few weeks ago, and he said so well that when a scene exists, when the reader knows or when the world knows what happens, and you can't add anything, you just skip it. You don't write it. He gave the example in his book of a daughter leaving her mom and going to America, and he didn't write that scene, the goodbye scene, because everybody knows what's going to be said. He has nothing to add. So instead, you add the night before.
Yep.
You add the mom saying, "Be sure you leave your green dress in the closet, so that when you come home, it'll bring out the color in your eyes." That you only write what can be new and surprising. And I'm going to have to go back and watch that scene from Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. I kind of avoid that one because I know it's Spencer Tracy's last one. But now that I know that's a love letter to her at the end. Beautiful.
It is.
Beautiful.
And that's such great advice from him. That's absolutely true. I 100% agree with that. Yeah.
Are you
That's
telling me that there's an emerald ring somewhere in the world right now that I could? Do we know where that ring is? Because I would love. I have an actor friend who swore to me that she put it on once. I won't say who it's from. I'm just saying there's a ring out there that she says she touched, and I don't know
put
if
it
I believe
on?
her. That's
Was
what
it
she
the
says.
so there was a an auction and it was either Christie's or Sotheby's. I can't remember. I think it's Sotheby's. I think it's Sotheby's. Um, and it was on display very briefly before this, but I don't I was it you have to tell me. Oh my
I
God.
have to ask. The fact that it's out
That's
there, and I know someone who says she touched this ring. I got to go back to her. Deirdre, I'm giving you a call after this. I don't know if I believe you, but she swears
um
by it.
it is out there. Someone bought it, someone owns it. Katharine Hepburn kept it for the rest of her life. She kept it for the whole of her life, which I found deeply telling and deeply poignant. Lovely.
If I ever remarry, I too shall. I will want emeralds. I will require emeralds. I think that will be my.
As one should. Why not?
Oh, we always wrap with some this and that's. I could talk to you forever, but we always wrap with just some this and that's. A little quick lightning round here at the end, if you're ready.
Absolutely.
All right. Just pick one. Coffee or tea?
Tea,
Mountains or beach?
beach,
Dogs or cats?
dogs,
All right. Early bird or night owl?
both. I don't sleep enough.
With all those puppy dogs and with all these ideas in your head, I mean, how could you? Are you a risk taker or the person who always knows what the band-aids are?
Um, Again, both. I grew up partly in Hawaii, jumping off cliffs, but I definitely know where the band-aids are.
All right. Yeah, you would have to.
Yes.
The waterproof ones at that. Let's see. Holiday or bringing up baby?
Oh, bringing up baby.
Into the Woods or Jane Eyre?
Into the woods.
Adam's Rib or Woman of the Year?
Oh my God. Possibly Adam's rib, but really can't. They're
Yeah.
both. I mean, holy cow. Are
I
they
mean,
good?
desk set or Philadelphia Story.
Philadelphia Story.
On Golden Pond was one of the last things I ever watched with my mom before she
Oh,
died, and it was a movie I'd grown up with, and
yes.
my mom was at that point sort of floating in and out of not consciousness, but she was fading, and I'll never forget she called Norman an old poop. So she did Catherine, she's like, you old poop, and she remembered that the name of the fish was Walter. And she said, they got Walter. And so it was one of the last. My mom always talked to the camera. She would always do the lines. She would do Moonstruck. She'd snap out of it like 10 seconds before Cher was ever going to say. My mom was always ruining movies that way. And, she went, like, this is within a week of her passing away, she was still talking to On Golden Pond and remembering Katharine Hepburn and Henry Fonda in in one of the last movies that he probably ever made.
Yeah.
I could
Oh
talk
my
movies
God.
all day.
Oh my God.
Like a few more questions for you. If you weren't a writer and you had a little magic, what would you do instead?
Rescue animals.
Yeah, you're kind of doing that already.
Yes, I am for rescue dogs. I'm trying to talk my husband into a fifth. So yes, but yeah, definitely rescue animals.
Nice. Who's we're going to link to all of your books, but who's another author we should be reading right now?
Oh, my friend Christina Baker Klein's fabulous The Foursome is coming out on Tuesday. Um, Absolutely unputdownable based on her own family history. Astonishing, astonishing story. It's just, yeah, she can just write like a house on fire.
She really can. And when she first talked about that book, because I was lucky enough, I'm lucky enough to know Christina, but I also was talking to her. This would have been 2 years ago when she was deep in the drafts. And when she
Yes.
said these were, distant family members, I remember sort of going back to my own family tree and being like, come on, surely we've got. Did no one perform in the circus? Did no one? I've got nothing on it. It's just that, how
Yes.
great is that she's got that story. Yeah, the foursome. We'll
That's
make sure to remind
hard.
people about that.
Writing about your own family. That's some high stakes stuff. But yeah, she's amazing. So yeah. So The Foursome, it comes out on Tuesday.
I know. Huzzah. We'll link to that one because it'll be out. What's your favorite dessert?
Chocolate cake.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a movement I can get behind. And last one. Last one. If we were to take a snapshot, a photograph of you doing something you love, what would we see?
Oh, me with people I love and dogs
Yeah,
and books.
I love
That's
that. Perfect. Well, in your most recent book here, the original, you described Katharine Hepburn as a quote thinking woman's woman, and I think that they meant that to be an insult at the time, a thinking
yes.
woman's woman. But man, oh man, from one thinking woman to another, the deference and the homage that I found in this book, that you're a thinking woman's woman too, Priya Parmar, and I'm grateful to know you.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to know you. I'm so happy you had me on here. Thank you.
Thank you. And folks, we will link to this book. It's called The Original and all the others. And we're wishing you love and light wherever it takes you. Be good to yourself, be good to one another. And we'll see you again soon on this wild and precious journey.